on anything, but instead you took the brunt of the blame.
It's a learning experience.
Yes.
So this is Media Mothership. I'm your host, Dr. Craig, joined by co-host Lord Taylor.
Yep.
We're broadcasting...
That's co-host, not host, as it sounded like you said.
We're broadcasting out of Edge Radio Studios, these multi-million-dollar equipment research level technology in Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania.
This is an interesting thing because I always notice that you say Edge Radio Studios. Where's the other studio? I haven't seen it.
Well, there's a production booth upstairs.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Potentially. And it is theatre of the mind. I mean, the theatre of the mind that saying Edge Radio Studios creates, I think, is powerful. Magic of media. I mean, you could look at us right now on the stream. So we're streaming on YouTube and Twitch, I think.
Hopefully.
Pretty sure we're streaming on YouTube and Twitch. So you can find that by going to Media Mothership and see the actual interior of this studio. People who have watched Rosehaven will recognize this studio as the one that was used in the Rosehaven ABC TV comedy community radio station.
And of course, you were the star of that TV show as well, weren't you?
Well, I do run little tours here so they can see it at a small charge.
Yep.
I don't do that because I don't think anyone would come. But it is funny to have a bit of media, magic here in the studio.
I'm just interested, did they clean up before they filmed, or...?
Look, they changed the studio in some dramatic ways.
Okay.
Right? They kept a lot of it is very recognizable. All of this is still all this. So the computers, the panel, for those that can't see because we're on radio, the CD players and so forth you can see, but they blocked out these glassed areas.
Okay, yeah.
It's worth what you've never seen it.
No, never.
So what do we do here on Media Mothership? We explore how media can shape our understanding of the world around us, usually through news. Usually I'm digging up interesting news articles. So let's go straight into a news article.
Are you defined by the binary oppositions? Ever doubt a life of stable meaning? Want to trace it all? Edge Radio doesn't just offer you media. We offer you Media Mothership. Media Mothership, designed to reveal the aporias of today for 1 hour of difference.
Yep.
What are you waiting for? Hop on the Media Mothership.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I just looked over at the thing and saw it was like 18 seconds remaining. I just knew it would just be torturous for that entire 18 seconds.
Torturous. I mean, that was Media Mothership production.
Oh, yeah.
That remixed the classic golden age of Hollywood of radios Escape series, but put Media Mothership in there instead. Indeed, the second half of today's show, Taylor will probably escape and leave to do an interview.
I will.
And we will deep dive into a little bit of golden radio drama, the Australian version of Superman. That's coming up later in this hour. But first, let's look at the news. First story is, this is what happens when you play Doom on an audio spectrogram.
Fantastic.
So it is. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. And we've been looking most weeks at how Doom, the video game Doom from the 90s, can be played on all manner of things. So this story is talking about how via audio you can get what's called a WAD file, and it will create you need then software that's capable of generating a live spectrogram to view the game's output.
So do you know what a spectrogram is?
Is it like a waveform?
It kind of is. So each sort of like pitching of a note equates to what's shown on there, as you can see on the thing there. So like with darker ones, the ones closer together, etc., things like that.
Right, yeah. Because what's really amazing here, I think I've used audio software. Mm-hmm. And one of them had this bizarre coloured pattern.
Yeah. It's not specifically a waveform that you see when you import
looked like
an
Predator
audio or
vision.
like that. Yeah.
Like it was heat signatures. But okay, so it's basically translating audio sound into a visual form that then you can manipulate to get a better sounding audio piece of work.
Yeah.
But in this case, they've been able to put the Doom game into audio that then if you run software that can capture it as a spectrogram, you see the Doom level. You're the guy with the gun shooting it out. So what we're going to do is just play the microphone input.
Fantastic.
So if anyone there is listening, they could, open up their Spectrogram software now and see Doom.
Exactly.
For those that don't have Spectrogram software installed on their FM car system or computer, just
use your imagination.
Use your imagination. What we're going to hear is a lot of distorted buzzing and some high-pitched squeals.
Yep, and then we'll hear the Doom audio.
Yes, that will be me talking. No, that will be the Doom audio. And some of those high-pitched squeals, if you have the image, you'll see is probably when they're hitting a keyboard button to move the view to a different spot, to move your character's field of vision. Anyway, let's listen to it now. This is the WAD audio file that can be then converted into a visual audio thing, diagram, image, spectrogram, through spectrogram.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. There it is. Ooh. So, so those kind of high-pitched squeals is, I think, putting inputs in, like you're selecting your character now, and now you're loading into Doom, and you're setting it up. It's a bit high-pitched for my liking.
Same.
Oh, hold on. Oops. Oh, I just clicked
Wow,
on some
you
other thing now.
pressed on something else.
All right. So yes, that was the Doom. Oh, I'll just leave that in the background while we're talking. It sounds a bit like a dial-up modem.
It does a bit, yeah. I like how you just turned that down and it made absolutely no difference.
Yeah, I don't know what frequency that's at. I'm sure dogs are barking now.
Wow.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you have a visual Doom has audio and visual, but when you convert it into only audio, it's inconceivable to think that this is a first-person shooter game.
Yeah.
In any way. So that's really blown me away, because normally people are playing Doom like on a lawnmower, but it'll be on the
screen
display
of it,
screen
yeah.
for a high-tech lawnmower or a tractor or something, or a watch. You won't have anything on audio, right? That then you can convert to see what it is with the spectrogram. But the thing is, just that audio itself is someone playing Doom.
I wonder what would happen if, like, in a couple tens of years or whatever, and someone, like, finds this recording, right, and then tries to transcribe it into a spectrogram and then into, like, a emulating database, what our voices would have added to that.
That's true. A couple of purple and orange tones that'll be seen. Well, I think we could do a broadcast purely in this format.
Okay.
Squeals and squeaks.
Yep.
And then convert it back to an audiogram thing.
Fantastic.
On an upcoming show, I have been starting to look into how the mind's pleasure chemicals, what I call the pleasure chemicals, serotonin or dopamine, are linked to music. There's been some really interesting music.
Cocaine.
So coming up, I'm not going to press the thing because I don't know what it's queued up to. Nice. So next news story is Macross, Japanese anime. I find this fascinating. So Macross, of course, is a Japanese anime. It basically features two really interesting aspects to its storytelling. So it's from the 80s, and it was translated and adapted into the West and relabeled as Robotech, and it drew upon 3 different unrelated anime that they squashed together to create one new anime series called Robotech. It used...
In America?
No, in Australia, throughout the world. The non-Japanese territories had it. So we got it in Australia, Robotech. We never got Macross, we got Robotech. And Robotech uses... Season 1 of Robotech is the first season of Macross, and Season 2 of Robotech is Southern Star Squadron, I think.
How
and
does
then
that
season
work?
3.
Are the characters,
Well, it's all science fiction.
Are the characters...
They like, so at the end of, like, Macross basically tells a story of an alien invasion where an alien spaceship crashes on Earth. We don't realize there's an alien. Well, it's not an invasion. There's an outside of Earth. There's this alien battle going on. Spaceship crashes on Earth. We don't know what's going on. Decades pass. We figure out what the technology is. We build this. We kind of rebuild part of the ship, launch it, and it triggers battles with these aliens. Of
course.
And it's got great mecha designs. So some of the fighters were based on the Tomcat model. So yeah, really cool. What I love about Macross, Robotech, is that it combines both kind of action with airplanes and a lot of singing. You'd like this for K-pop. So much idol singing in this.
Oh yeah, I would like it.
Theory of what I really found fascinating about how they defeat the aliens is that, if I remember correctly, the Zentradi aliens had removed culture from their life. And so there was not music or love anymore with the Zentradi community. And at the end, they figured out that if they had an idol singer start singing, it would actually hack into the programming and minds of these aliens, because they couldn't handle the J-pop idol singing vibe. So there's always singing that goes on as a weaponized attack
Oh, fantastic.
against these others.
That reminds
aliens.
me of, what's it called? Not GTA, but the one that's like GTA. Saints Row.
Okay, yes.
Saints Row 4, I think. Is it 4? Where they've got the dubstep gun.
Yeah. I mean, what I like about when music enters a pop culture
Combat.
action space, combat space, is that it's really that soft power idea, right? So you've got on one hand hard power, so you've literally got military grade guns and weapons and spaceships and fighter jets that are shooting and killing, and then in Macross you also have soft power, literally cultural power. In this case, singing, J-pop electro beat music. That then has an immediate effect on the aliens. Where not only, again, we were talking about how music can release dopamine and serotonin and other chemicals in the mind.
Cocaine.
No, not cocaine. In this series, it can then actually kind of change do you have to leave?
I do.
No. Anyway, really cool. Anyway, the big thing with Macross is that it seems to be finally coming to Disney. Because of the fact that it went through Robotech, it meant that Macross could never get released in the West because of the licensing deal with the distributor of Robotech. But finally, it seems that everything except for that foundational series that got taken up into Robotech will be coming to the West in some form, right? And Disney seems to be part of it.
Spectrogram.
The Spectrogram. That'd be quite interesting because, the Macross series has continued over those decades that it was never released in the West because of the restrictions that Harmony Gold, that's them, had placed on the global market because they had the rights. But finally, it seems some arrangements were made. So celebration. All right. Well, thank you, Taylor. Moving on to
I might be back later.
Yeah, you might be.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Theater of the Mind. Now what I want to do is move on to the second part, which is basically setting up a bit of a deep dive into classic radio dramas. And what we're going to explore firstly is Superman. So it turns out that Superman was adapted into Australia back in 1949. So, of course, it first premiered as a comic book series in 1938 in America. Then it did make its way onto radio in the US. But in 1949, it was adapted to Australia. So what we're going to listen to is part of the first episode from the 1949 Australian radio series Superman. We're going to unpack a little bit about what an Act 1 structure is, whether this still holds up today, how the adaptation works, coming from such a distinctive American property, Superman, to an Australian property. Before we go any further, though, I want to set it up by looking a little bit about what the first episode of any series is meant to do, what the heavy lifting it's meant to do. So as we're listening to it, we can think, is this working? So here's a little clip from Film Courage with a screenplay scriptwriter, Naomi Betty, talking about what an Act 1 needs to do.
What is the purpose of Act 1?
Well, Act 1 gives us all of the context that we need in order to understand the story that we're about to watch, and understand, it basically sets up the who wants what of your movie. So, if we look at each movie as being a story of someone wants something, wants it badly, goes after it against big conflict, great opposition, then Act 1 sets up all of those pieces, right? So it tells us who, it tells us what they want, it tells us why they want it, and it tells us what they're up against. So all of those pieces that sort of create the foundation of the story, or that story engine that we were talking about earlier, that's what Act 1 does. It sets up all of those things so that when we launch into Act 2, or that Act 2 adventure you might have heard it called, when we begin that, we have all of the information that we need in order to understand who are we watching, what are they trying to do, what are they up against, why do they want it so badly? All of that's been established so that we can just watch everything escalate in Act 2. Does that make sense?
It does. And
So what we're going to listen to now is episode 1 of the 1949 Superman series, and let's see what it's setting up. Who, what, when, why, where, how. So who's in this scene? What are they doing? What seems to be the drama that's playing out, and we'll see how it shapes up as a piece of work. So again, this is 1949, the Australian version of Superman. Also, see if you can hear an Australian accent here. It'd be interesting. Of course, in 1949. The radio BBC voice still dominated how Australian airwaves thought of a good radio voice. So I assume it's probably going to sound a little bit BBC Australia, if you can understand that. But maybe some Australian twang. Certainly no American hard R's and whatnot.
A new, exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an aeroplane, more powerful than a locomotive, Superman! Superman, a being no larger than an ordinary man, but possessed of powers and abilities never before realized on Earth. Able to leap into the air an eighth of a mile at a single bound, hurtle a 20-story building with ease, race a high-powered bullet to its target, lift tremendous weights, and rend solid steel in his bare hands as though it were paper. Superman, a strange visitor from a distant planet, champion of the oppressed, physical marvel extraordinary, who has sworn to devote his existence on Earth to helping those in need.
I'll just pause it there. It's interesting to hear the type of abilities that Superman has at this point in his history. So we're really talking here about the 1930s golden age Superman. Sorry, I'll just pause that now. The 1930s golden age Superman that we're hearing really being broadcast here in 49. So we've got not yet the ability to fly, it appears. He can only leap over tall buildings. He certainly has super strength and super speed and invulnerability, but not yet it appears to be some of those other abilities which developed in certainly the 50s and the silver age of Superman. That's the super hearing, flying without needing to do a jump, kryptonite, I don't think has been introduced yet for Superman. I know kryptonite is certainly introduced through the radio series first, rather than the comic series. So it is interesting, again, what abilities Superman has in 1949. So now, going back to the series.
Superman, a being no larger than an ordinary man, but possessed of powers and abilities never before realized on Earth. Able to leap into the air an eighth of a mile at a single bound, hurtle a 20-story building with ease, race a high-powered bullet to its target, lift tremendous weights, and rend solid steel in his bare hands as though it were paper. Superman, a strange visitor from a distant planet, champion of the oppressed, physical marvel extraordinary, who has sworn to devote his existence on Earth to helping those in need. As our story begins, we ask you to come with us on a far journey, a journey that takes us millions of miles from the Earth, where the planet Krypton burns like a green star in the endless heavens. Here, civilization is far advanced. It has brought forth a race of supermen, men and women like ourselves, but advanced to the absolute peak of human perfection. As we near Krypton, we see high walls and gleaming turrets. We approach the magnificent Temple of Wisdom, and there, in a great hall, Jor-El, Krypton's foremost man of science, is about to address a meeting of the planet's governing house.
Attention! Attention, gentlemen. Jor-El speaks.
Members of the Council, I have completed my solar calculations, and much as I dread uttering these words, I have come to the conclusion Krypton is doomed.
Did I hear him right? Gentlemen! Gentlemen! Hear him out.
These internal quakes we have been experiencing, these volcanic eruptions, tidal waves, gas escaping from giant craters, all point to only one thing. Krypton is utterly and finally doomed.
By the man's man! One moment, gentlemen, one moment. There is no cause for anxiety. I am certain Jor-El has made a mistake. True, we have had a few minor quakes and eruptions, but nothing very serious. There must be some error in your calculations, Jor-El.
No, there is no error, Roseanne. I only wish there were. The sun is gradually drawing Krypton closer to it. Within a month, possibly a week, the gravitational pull will be so tremendous that Krypton will not be able to weather the strain. And then our planet will explode like a giant bubble, destroying every living thing on it.
Gentlemen, assuming for the moment, Jor-El, that what you say is true, how are we to avoid it? What can we do to stop it?
There is only one way. As you all know, I have been working on a spaceship designed for interplanetary travel. With time and united effort, we might transport the entire population of Krypton to another world.
Impossible. Where would we go?
To the Earth. My studies tell me the atmosphere of the Earth is very nearly the same as our own.
You have been working too hard, Jor-El. You need a rest. Believe me, we have the utmost respect for your knowledge and integrity, but this is carrying it too far. Planets as large as Krypton do not explode, Jor-El.
Wait! Do you hear that? It is the forewarning of doom. Every moment is precious now. Quakes like that are sounding the death knell of Krypton. It will happen, gentlemen, and happen soon. And when the last day of eruption comes...
When it comes, Jor-El, it shall find us all ready. If Krypton is to die, we shall die with it. The parting would be much too severe.
Very well. Laugh if you like, Roseanne, and you, members of the Council. I have no time to laugh. My wife, Lara, and my infant son are dear to me. It is not my wish to stand by and see them destroyed. Laugh, all of you. But a time will come And the time is perhaps very close at hand when you will wish you had heeded the words of Jor-El. Now you think me a fool. But remember what I have said. When Krypton is shattered into 1,000 million stars, when the glorious civilization we have built is no more, when you and your families are swept from the face of Krypton like dust.
Order! Order, gentlemen, order! You have heard Jor-El speak. Is it your wish that we devote time and money to the building of spaceships for the transportation of Krypton's population to another planet? No! I am sorry, Jor-El. The Council has spoken.
Yes, and signed the death warrant of every living thing on Krypton. Well, I've done my best to convince you. Now all that remains for me is to proceed with my own means of salvation. My own spaceship, to save the lives of those near and dear to me. As for the rest of you, may the gods have mercy on your souls.
May the gods have mercy on your soul. So this is halfway through the first episode, 6 minutes and 30 into it, 12 minutes in total. It's interesting here, obviously Act 1 of the 1949 Australian radio series Superman is very close to what we remember from Superman's Act 1. We've got Krypton, the planet, home planet of Superman, that is about to be destroyed. It's about to have a natural calamity befall it to its absolute destruction. Very timely, in a way, given the contemporary worries around climate change today in our world, to hear debates around climate change happening with Krypton in the Superman story. Fascinatingly, here we hear Jor-El, Superman's father, proposing the plan of building as many spaceships as they can because he's found a planet that can sustain the Kryptons, that is Earth. So he's proposing an exodus from Krypton to Earth for all people of Krypton. So again, I can't recall if that's the origin story of Krypton's destruction there, whether Earth was proposed as a planned escape route that Jor-El was making. Certainly the Council reject that plan and reject the idea that Krypton's about to explode, as is the way of the original story. So it's skewing as an adaptation very close to that first Act 1 of the emotional impact that we later on see Superman struggling with as he recognizes from this first scene that we're witnessing the destruction of Krypton. And we'll see now how it builds towards the escape. How does it develop next in the second half of Act 1, where we have some foundations being laid around a world under threat into near collapse, but everyone else denying that, and then Jor-El's decision to save, hopefully, himself and his wife and son. Let's see if that happens in this version of the Superman Act from 1949 in Australia.
Oh. Lara, I didn't see you.
I came out to take the air on the terrace. Oh, it's been terribly hot all day. Is that because we're being drawn to the sun, Jor-El?
Yes.
What did the council have to say about that?
I didn't mention it.
Is the model of your spaceship almost finished?
Yes, I just drove the last rivet. How does it look?
Splendid. But will it work?
That remains to be seen. If it does work, I shall immediately begin construction of another just like it, only much larger. One big enough to carry all three of us to another world.
And when will that be? Every moment that we spend waiting and wondering.
Yes, I know, Lara. It's been hard on all of us. And particularly hard on you. How's the boy?
Sleeping. That quake this afternoon frightened him, but he's all right now. Can't you come in and look at him? You scarcely see him these days, what with working all hours on the spaceship model.
It can't be helped, dear. I'm racing against time. Right now, I'm anxious to know whether the model will behave as I hope.
How does it operate?
Very simply. When all is ready, I throw this switch. That closes the circuit, and electric energy builds up pressure in the atomic generators. Then, at the final moment, the pressure forces the ship from its carrier and speeds it on its way.
But where does it go?
Wherever it's pointed. This one I'm directing to the planet Earth.
Earth? What is that, Jor-El?
A planet, smaller than our own, situated on the other side of the sun. It's inhabited by a race of people similar to ourselves.
Like ourselves?
Only partly, of course, my dear. They're about the same size, but nowhere nearly as developed. Very weak and helpless, and with all their faculties extremely limited.
Why, how do you mean?
Well, I haven't time to go into a detailed explanation now, Lara, but it's something like this. You know how far you step when you want to go somewhere.
Oh, practically as far as I want to. Why, one step takes me to Braz's house near the fountain.
Exactly. Well, down where I'm sending this spaceship, it's quite different. An Earthman steps only 3 feet at a time at most, and everything else is in proportion.
And that's where we're going. Oh, how dreadful.
My dear, which would you rather do? Go to Earth and live, or stay on Krypton and die?
I'll do anything you say, Jor-El, anything. It doesn't matter to me whether we live or die, so long as we're together. It's only the boy I worry about.
Yes, I know. Oh, Lara, darling, don't worry. He'll be saved.
When are you testing the spaceship model?
In the morning. Just as dawn breaks, I'll send it on its way. Lara! Lara, do you hear that?
Yes. Yes, what is it?
Subterranean explosions. Do you feel the ground trembling?
Yes, I do. Jor-El, do you think...
Lara, I'm afraid it's come. Where is the boy, Kal-El?
What do you mean?
Get him quickly. This is the end.
Jor-El, what can we do?
Nothing. I'm not ready. Oh, what a fool I've been to delay.
It isn't your fault. You did all you could.
If only this model were large enough, we could take a chance.
Would it carry one of us safely to Earth?
Oh, I think so, but... Lara, where are you going? Stay here with me.
I'm getting Kal-El. If one of us can be saved, it should be the boy.
No, Lara, come back. If one must go, it should be you. Lara, I said come back, come back.
All right, so just to interrupt the Superman Australian radio series, episode 1 from 1949. In terms of adaptations from America to Australia, it seems to be staying very close to the fidelity of the original source material. We have the collapse now of Krypton, as is always established in Superman Act 1 stories, where Krypton it destroys itself, so it appears as if we're on the brink of destruction. Interestingly here, the people who live on Krypton are already superpowered. There's a great dialogue where Jor-El and his wife are talking about how far it takes them to walk somewhere, and she's saying, oh, well, I can bound within one step to the neighbor's park all the way over there. Yet later on, I think that idea of the Kryptonites being superpowered already gets changed, so that it's when they arrive on Earth, different gravity, the sun, the yellow sun, giving Superman his powers. But apart from that, yeah, it seems that, again, they're still figuring out the rules of Superman, I guess, at this time, 1949. Some of the more established rules that we then see get further codified through the movies, in particular, are still to come. But we can hear maybe a little bit of Australian twang. I do feel this has trace elements of an Australian vocal performance so far. So there is a little bit of adaptation going on here. Let's hear the last few minutes now, as we'll see how Clark Kent, to become Clark Kent, can escape the collapse of Krypton.
Here he is, Jor-El, still asleep. Goodbye, Kal-El.
Please, Lara.
No, Jor-El, listen to me. We both stay here. Kal-El goes in the spaceship. If there's a chance, Jor-El, one little chance, I want it for my son.
Perhaps you're right, Lara.
Jor-El, look! Look at the sky! It's fiery red. And the mountains! Look! The mountains are falling in! Jor-El, what's happening?
The end of Krypton, Lara, just as I foretold. This is the last great quake.
Jor-El, listen!
Here, quick, give me the boy.
Oh, Kal-El, what are you doing, Jor-El?
Opening the door, putting him inside.
The house, it's swaying. It's breaking apart. Look, Jor-El.
There, he's safe inside. Now for the switch. Stand back, Lara.
Oh, Jor-El, will it reach the Earth?
Only the gods know. But there's a chance, the only chance. Stand back now, Lara. I'm going to throw the switch.
What's stopping the spaceship? Why doesn't it go?
She's waiting for pressure. Oh, we may have been too late if it doesn't work up soon. Lara, it's off. It's on its way. Lara, listen, can you hear me? Our boy, Kal-El, our son. Lara, he's on his way to Earth.
Right,
Though
1949.
the tiny rocket ship roars into the uncharted heavens as the mighty planet of Krypton explodes into millions of glowing fragments, glittering stars to remain forever in the night sky. Jor-El and Lara, devoted parents of the tiny boy, perish in the giant quake that destroys Krypton. But what of the rocket ship? Does it reach Earth? Does it find its mark in all the far-flung darkness of space? Remember, don't miss the next installment of Superman!
Not a fan of the whistle, but 1949 this came out. So a really interesting moment in terms of the history. Sorry, I'll close that now. History Australia was experiencing then. It's fascinating that it's Superman in 1949 that's becoming incredibly popular through this radio drama in Australia. Many people would say that we have this emergence of Australian identity going on during that time, that this adaptation of Superman in 1949 is coming around a time when Australia is starting to separate more from its British colonial roots and starting to establish a stronger national identity of its own. One which is, as time would pass, more aligned with the US. So we also have this idea of post-war optimism and innovation that's going on in post-World War II Australia during this time. A lot of adaptations of US pop culture, Superman being one of them, but other superheroes also being adapted into Australia. So it's interesting to hear though, with the Australian voice, its localization. And it'll be interesting, we'll play a few episodes in upcoming episodes of Media Mothership, how that might make more local changes. It's certainly very child-friendly entertainment. There's an article about this from the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia talking about the Superman series from 49. Particularly the performance that we'll hear next week when we listen to an episode by Brisbane native Leonard Teale, who's best remembered in Australia from his performance from the TV cop series Homicide. But he was playing Superman next week and became one of his very popular roles as Superman. So there's 1,040 episodes made of this, so certainly very popular. Each episode was 15 minutes, and they aired Monday to Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. So yeah, prime time listening slots for people. It was on Sydney's radio station 2GB. I'm not sure if it ever broadcast anywhere beyond that, but certainly Sydney's radio station 2GB has some ads on it. There are some scripts that the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia have for it. In terms of actual episodes, it seems there's only 4 that are circulating in any way you can listen to today. There's the first 2 episodes, episode 1 we've just heard, then episode 2 that we'll analyze next week, and then 2 further episodes, I think episode 146 or something, and 147, that we might have time to listen to later. So a lot of it seems lost and obviously quite incomplete, given there were over 1,000 episodes made, 50 minutes each. So the synopsis of the series reads, an adventure radio series for children. This American-inspired series was based on the exploits of Superman, a superhero whose real identity is Clark Kent, reporter for the newspaper Daily Planet. So they've definitely kept to the current, late 40s version of Superman that became established in the US, where we have the newspaper Daily Planet. We have his identity, Clark Kent. Next week, though, there's some changes, right? I mean, in terms of the typical story of Clark Kent, Act 1 is, as we've heard here, escapes from Krypton, which establishes this emotional impact he has, that he's an immigrant, he's an escapee from a kind of disaster for his homeland. Then we have these ideas of character and myth that get established in those first other episodes, where he's taken in by the Kents to raise and, very much become this kind of humble US citizen. But is that the case in episode 2? We'll check that out. What's also interesting in terms of this work as an adaptation is how it was integrated into the series. There's a news story that was published in 10th of March 1949, just as this was being released, which kind of gives a hint into the excitement, I guess, around Superman at that time. So to quote from this news story, it says, Superman, the recently acquired AW 6 o'clocker, so the time slot it's in, not only makes a better radio serial than a newspaper strip. At that stage, of course, Superman was serialized in newspapers. It would also become collected in comic books, but certainly early on in its history, it was a serialized newspaper strip. So to continue with the Australian news story, so it goes on to say, but it was more healthy for children than most of the serials currently broadcast. So again, Superman being seen as for parents, a healthy choice for children to listen to compared to other serials. I guess you might have had Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, also on at that time. So the story goes on. Of course, our magnetic friend, Clark Kent, still performs miracles, but then you expect that sort of thing in Superman, and it merely seems part of the fun. It is also so fantastic as to present no worry to mothers with sensitive youngsters. Great, so it gets, a G rating. So certainly aimed at kids, though, heavy going. The destruction of Krypton in Act 1, I mean, it's certainly, I think, still timely as it was then in terms of the dangers of not being alert for changing climate conditions, science, trying to provide the best solutions for addressing problems. I mean, I think cautionary tale. So here we have now Act 1 getting established. Interesting again, thinking about it being adapted into Australia. American piece of pop culture, but very much could be seen as part of that post-war emergent Australian identity, leaving the British colonial roots behind and adapting its kind of newfound cultural impacts from the US. So really interesting to consider in that way. Obviously, in terms of an Act 1, it's a little weak because we're all very familiar with the story of Krypton being destroyed. We have the parents being the only roles that are really the central focus of this, the protagonists. Jor-El, the father, trying to get the council to agree that there's a problem with Krypton, building the spaceship, deciding to send it off. Interesting, the role of the mother here, that she's the one that decides that it should be the son that gets sent, not her, to survive the destruction of Krypton that Kal-El, the son, gets sent. So again, the mother taking some agency there rather than the father who doesn't really have any idea. Well, realizes, I guess, that he hasn't had enough time, hasn't really thought about who's going to go in this spaceship. And obviously the mother steps in and says, well, it's so small. It's got to be the baby. But pretty consistent, given this came out in 1949, consistent in terms of how even the later movies, Man of Steel, establishes the same thing. Krypton, Superman's dad, Jor-El, the conflict with the council, the rejection of his science, him deciding to complete the spaceship. Interestingly, yes, in this case, it's the mother that sends Superman off, or Kal-El. So yeah, interesting. What's also interesting about the Superman origin stories, of course, as many people have observed, it shares a lot of similarities to the biblical story of Moses, which is fascinating to consider. So, of course, Moses was placed in the basket by his mother when it was decided by the Pharaoh that he was going to kill all boys, Jewish boys. So the mother sent Moses down the Nile in the basket to be rescued by, the Pharaoh's daughter, I think? And that shares some similarity, the idea that Jor-El sends his son in this spaceship to escape the destruction of Krypton, just like Moses was. So again, many people draw that analogy. Some people also see an analogy with Jesus, that the Father's, giving his son to save the world, like God with Jesus. So again, it's interesting. Zack Snyder's Man of Steel has a lot of parallels with Jesus. So fascinating to consider the type of religious iconography that's getting consumed within this. Of course, the creators of Superman were both Jewish, so they were certainly integrating their own upraising and myths they'd been engaged in. So maybe not surprising that it replicates some aspects of the story of Moses with Superman escaping Krypton. So quite fascinating to consider those changes. So again, in terms of an Act 1, it establishes a lot. People can kind of see within this religious allegories of Superman's role, the escape from a dying, exploding culture, him now in episode 2 that we'll listen to next week, becoming an immigrant, trying to see how he survives on Earth. And, what role Krypton plays within that would be interesting to see. Often, in terms of Act 1, it lacks Superman appearing. So it'll be interesting to see how episode 2 tries and creates that. Interesting sound effects. I liked everything except the whistle. The explosions. Again, great theater of the mind. So I'll put up some show notes if people are interested. The radio version of this has been preserved through the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia, and you can check that out on their SoundCloud page as well. There's some really fascinating articles about this moment of history where Australia had an incredibly popular version of Superman that was produced in Australia by Australians in 1949. It became incredibly popular, had over 1,000 episodes, aired only in Sydney, it seems. So fantastic to have brought that now finally to the airwaves of Hobart and the world through our digital stream. And Act 1, pretty much in lockstep with the mothership of Superman. So again, if you are curious to know more about the Australian version of Superman from 1949, I'll post show notes up on the podcast episode, as well as on the show notes via YouTube. You can also listen to previous episodes on Edge Radio's website and on Twitch as well. Next week, we'll look a little bit further about adapting Superman into 1950s Australia through looking at a couple of other episodes. We'll unpack how Act 1s can develop. We'll have a look at how the adaptation of Superman into Australia took some changes from the version that we know today, and whether those were good or bad. So if you've enjoyed the show, please, subscribe to the show via podcast or via YouTube. Check out further information on Facebook or Instagram for Media Mothership. Coming up eventually, once Taylor finishes his interview with the comedian, will be K-Pop Unlimited. There might even be a chance to listen to some of the interview content he's done, which will be intriguing. So keep listening now to Edge Radio 99.3 FM. Coming up next, we've got Good Grief by Teddy.